and welcome to Into the Light. I'm your host, Edina Mauvana. Today we have Dr. Emily. Dr. Emily empowers women to shed physical, mental, and spiritual weight through her transformative Healthy Me PhD program. With a deep focus on fasting as a sustainable weight loss solution, she simplifies complex health topics, guiding women to a healthier, purpose-driven future. It's amazing work you do. I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you
How
for
you doing
having
today?
me.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. And I was just telling you, I know before we got into the recording here, how much, of a fan of the work that you do I am. I've been following your Instagram and all of the weight loss and transformative journeys that you have, and on your website, so many women who have been like myself. Actually, I used intermittent fasting and another number of other things during my own weight loss journey. And especially right now to try and steer clear of weight loss medications and all of that. So I just love the work that you do for that reason.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm excited that you're here today and to share a little bit more about your story and what you really are advocating for with the work you do, because I know that it's more than just a simple weight loss journey that you share with your own self. So tell me a little bit about your background and what really got you into this work that you do and moving into the holistic healing and everything that you can combine it with.
So I'm a MD. I'm a third generation physician, actually. My
Wow.
dad and grandpa were both surgeons. Very traditional medicine path, always loved weight loss. It's my own personal story. I mean, I was on fen-phen when I turned 18. I had weight loss surgery. I've been there, done that in the medical realm, and I ran a weight loss clinic, believe it or not, in my own clinic. And after years and years of doing that, and then a pregnancy where I had gestational diabetes and all of these complications, I found myself with a little 1-year-old who was a little budding sugar addict in front of me, throwing fits at our little candy jar. And I was like, something has to change. We can't continue this. And I really didn't have a medical solution. So I went about doing obesity medicine certification. So kind of did extra training from family medicine in obesity medicine. And interestingly, as you said, these are the doctors who generally are writing shots right now. They are the people out there who are just blowing this thing up alongside the pharmaceutical industry. But what happened for me too was I felt like I was treating women like me over and over again. These were beautiful, successful women. They just struggled with their weight and they held themselves back so much in life because of that. And it was so deeply ingrained in my own story that I was like, listen, we're missing something here. And even in my obesity medicine certification, it really wasn't well covered. So I did life and weight loss coach certification to kind of understand the psychology of it. And from there, it's been no turning back. It's kind of been this evolution for me, more and more out of traditional medicine into really looking at creating the whole healthy you. I think I started with a very medical approach of what does the medicine say are the best diets and what are the medical guidelines? And with time, I realized this is really probably not everybody's real goals. They just want to be healthy, and we can't pull apart humans and take out spiritual health from physical health and then call you healthy, right? I think that's what we see a bit of with the shots and those things. It's well, I just want to think about food less. Well, but you can't really get it to a healthy weight through that. You might either get too thin or you won't hit your goals. Honoring that I am a whole human being, that I want to be healthy in every area of my life, spirituality being probably the key behind it, from a doctor who comes from a physical realm, right? How do you end up there as a third generation physician? It is a journey.
Yeah, amazing. And so are you really feeling like you're helping primarily people who are trying to get away from the pharmaceuticals, medicines that they're currently taking, and making a long-term plan to take less of that and move more towards ways to heal that aren't reliant on that medical system?
Mostly, I mean, I still have ladies who I don't write for medications anymore because
Yeah.
I coach. And so it's just not something I had the option, and I kind of had to make a very conscientious decision to not be in that world. So I don't, but I do have some who are on them. We just recognize that it's a short-term tool, which is not really what's being sold, to be honest with you, but it's a tool. And it can be part of it. There's a much bigger tool, like, right? There's so many other available healthy options for you that really incorporate things like fasting. I love fasting. And that's kind of how
Hmm.
I got into the fasting realm was I think fasting is really the non-shot alternative to the shots. Like there's the same pluses and the same minuses to it. Many of us, as you shared, have done intermittent fasting without a maybe a spiritual goal. And so to me, I think it all ties together, right? It's like the coach mindset, the spiritual journey, and then additionally the health goals beside it that really create what I call the healthy me reset.
Okay. Yeah, that makes so much sense to me. Help the full 360 is important. All of the components being in alignment, like spiritually and mentally and physically. I think that's such a huge part of the journey. And I was also curious because it seems like you all have a lot of information about like Ozempic and Wegovy and people who have maybe like I have friends and whatever I've heard that it really damages the gut health. So there's like a lot of potential recovery? Are you helping women who have maybe done it that way and who are trying to now repair and fighting it, but maybe even fighting an uphill battle for some of the decisions and medications that were used that it might have been causing more damage?
Sure. I mean, for sure. Like that was part of my story.
Mm.
After weight loss surgery, I ended up like my baby had a protein uptake deficiency on her newborn screen. And so you tell a mom that, and I was like, what have I done? Right. Like, and so this space of saying that, so Ozempic and those medications, they do slow down the gut, which automatically changes the gut health, right? Like most often I see a lot of women coming, I don't want to do those or I want to come off of them because I just feel awful. Like the healthy you isn't bloated and feeling awful all the time. The healthy you feels good with the foods you eat, right? And so, yes, certainly like all of that history of, I call this diet brain. Like my ladies have a lot, and let's be honest, as women in America, we all have a lot of diet brain, right? Like we want to over restrict, we want to like get results faster. We've been sold it's really quick. We've been sold just do this 10-day challenge with no thoughts on the back end of what we're going to do. And so we unwire all of that in my reset. Yeah, I mean, we to really get healthy, I think you have to have like a firm foundation underneath it. And it
Hmm.
can't be based in the dieting industry. It
Right.
just can't.
It's not sustainable.
No, and there's always going to be the next metric, right? Where it's like we see these people now on Ozempic and those things who are getting like you kind of look at them and you're like, are they sick? Like, are they? Because obviously they don't have a healthy metric at where to stop, right? Like, and unfortunately, as the system is working right now, it's hard to look at that. Like, who's going to tell them to stop? I mean, I think that space of honoring that we can't make this a one size fits all for everyone, or we're going to have a lot of really unhealthy outcomes is something that's coming down the pike for sure.
Wow. Yeah. So how long are you working with your clients in the full reset? Like it sounds like it's a whole healthy me PhD program. Like how long does it take for someone to really work with your program and get the results that they're trying to achieve?
So we like to set kind of it's individualized at this point, and so I like to be very real with them on goals. Generally, it's 3 months. A lot end up doing 6 months. It's a 12-week program, but really
Yeah.
6 months for a lot of people is more of the norm. And to be honest with you, we set really like reasonable goals. Some of my ladies, they need to really learn how to have a healthy relationship with anxiety and learn how like have very like we create really holistic, natural ways to work through that through mindset and through general health. Because most of my ladies do want to come off of medications or cut back on medications. And so
Hmm.
that space, sometimes if their goal they come to me for is weight loss, we're doing a little bit of time on the anxiety before we even go into that. Like I
Right.
like to think of it, I'm a primary care doctor by heart. So I like to think of it as like you are one human being. We're going to hit what is like the most pressing, and we'll just keep working through this reset. And we actually start spiritually. We start with a
Mm.
spiritual foundation that's grounded and like other humans aren't necessarily going to tell me my highest levels. Like it's between me and being spiritually healthy, between me and like my higher power to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And of course, we want to like work through a lot of maybe the traumas, underlying traumas, like you said, that's creating the anxiety, that's creating the problem in the first place. And so I feel like from what I've learned, a lot of that underlying trauma can be from a religious nature or from a starting point of needing to reconcile things from religious background or traumas that might have occurred. And now we're gaining a lot of new spiritual perspective and direction, and a lot of the old the old things have to shed away. And so I love that that's kind of the approach that you're taking. Are you also supporting women? Because I know you mentioned your background is kind of like you're moving more into this spiritual or less conventional medical background type of thing. So can you tell me a little bit more about your own spiritual journey and what brought you? I think you mentioned from a Christian background to now being a little bit more like maybe taking down different challenges with people who are addressing these spiritual challenges in their life.
Yes, I love that. I love in your bio on your Instagram where it says not that kind of Muslim. I was
Yeah.
like, so I'm kind of like hashtag not that kind of Christian, right? Like, so
Okay.
I grew up like very, very traditional Catholic and like went through life. And I think that like there's a space there for honoring that, but also there's a space of realizing that like for all of us in the past, there's hurt there. And for a lot of us who've walked non-traditional paths, I mean, I had my daughter, like I found out I was pregnant with my daughter 10 days before I left for medical school. It was wild. We have a really long story, but I was very non-traditional and I felt very like kind of excluded in my church and
Mm,
went through a phase where I moved around people who were all religious backgrounds. And I loved that. Like I loved bringing that in from a very traditional place. I think medicine is also very open-minded in that way too.
mm,
And so for me, as I went forward, I really found my faith again through meditation, right? Like it started with meditation, which is really interesting. I had a moment where I just was meditating. I was like, okay, I'm just going to choose like to explore this more, right? And
mhm.
then different like tools have come up through that process of like prayer and fasting and those sorts of things to help grow. But I think that, as you said, healing that trauma of the past, I think of it as like we create these boxes of safety from like a very childlike brain. And as now an adult or someone later in their life, it's like, can I re-explore that in a healthy way? So we actually do that. That's like the first coaching we do of looking at what is not helping you here and what's kind of new ways to look at that and new like energy to put into that and new spaces to spend time in that in very healthy ways.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I like to think of it also, it's all of this is a rediscovery of what makes our soul feel like its purpose. And that's such a like leading a purpose driven life or finding your dharma or whatever that might be in different religious and spiritual ancient traditions are all focused around that. And so I feel like sometimes when we come from either a Christian background or Catholic or Muslim, like you, unless you're really like leading your life in a way where it's authentically soul and purposefully driven, then it doesn't matter what religious label you are, you're going to have these increasing physical ailments, mental, physical, spiritual ailments until that deepest root problem is addressed, so that's definitely missing in the conventional medical doctor visits. And so I love what you do to bring it all about kind of that finding your soul purpose and living in authenticity, especially as women. I think we're all trying to do that.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I had an article. It was actually so in the AFP magazine a couple years ago where it was called the spiritual assessment. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but like
Yeah.
I got obsessed with it after that. I was like,
Yeah.
we only talk about this for end of life care. I'm like, why are we not doing this for all of our doctor's visits? Like,
Right.
where do you turn for peace? Where do you turn for comfort? Like, and I actually think there are more physicians open to this than you would think, but it's not something learned in our training. It's something that they're very uncomfortable with. And it's almost like we're waiting. Most traditional medicine physicians are waiting for the patient to bring it up, and the patient is never going to bring it up unless it's
Mhm.
like we think of things like weight loss or like anxiety is like that's my own problem. If you say cancer, then maybe I'll think like, okay, we should really talk about where I'm at spiritually. But like all of these things play out in our bodies. You're so right. Like I mean, the studies show it with the cortisol levels, with the weight gain, with the sleep disturbances. Like And I think when you disconnect that, you miss the core strength, like the ultimate strength behind making these physical transformations lives in that like spiritual soul journey first, right?
Yeah, amazing. So tell me a little bit about, I know you work with, I don't know, how many women and what are the biggest transformations that you've seen in your clients in that they've achieved in the, you said 12-week period, or I know they go on for longer and more. So tell me a little bit about these, how women are their before and afters when they're going through your program.
Oh my goodness, so much. And I love it because it is in all elements. So we look at spiritual, physical, and mental health. And do pull it apart into those like we do a month in each in the reset for that purpose because some women will lose our I love to see women hit like a 10% weight loss goal. I like to set really good, reasonable, healthy results
Yeah.
because we know that changes so much of our health trajectory rather than saying, I want to be 105 pounds when you're starting. So a lot of them hit those goals. I mean, I've certainly coached women to lose 120, 130 pounds.
Wow.
Like we have very big success rates. Ladies who have never been able to lose that weight because we do it differently. But also, I'm so proud of the ladies who like, I had one lady who had so much, especially in like a Christian origin who I coach a lot of like spouses of pastors or physicians or people like that who feel very isolated in their communities. And so they kind of step out in anywhere and they feel like they have to be little Miss Perfect. And there's no one that they can talk to about it. So one of my ladies, she was like, gosh, I was written this anxiety medication and like I don't know how to feel about starting it. And like, so we literally learned how to like be in control of anxiety. She was able to do that without starting medication and lose weight. It's like those trajectories are life changing. And then the ones who really repair their relationships with like spiritually, with like higher power, God, like to them, like that, those thought errors are so ingrained that to be able to, I had one lady who's very traditionally Catholic and was like, I don't know what to do with this, you know? And she's like, one of the things I'm the most proud of is I went back and I did confession because for me that mattered. But getting healthy for her, everybody is a little different in that journey, but just creating that spiritual space, the physical space, and the mental space. I love watching those journeys.
Yeah, it's amazing. And do you also have a community? I think you do one-on-one work, but you have a community of support as well in a Facebook group as well?
So I decided when I wanted to do a Facebook group, I decided to do the fasting flock. It's called the
Oh
fasting
yeah,
flock.
yeah, that's
And
what I
we are
saw.
fasters, right? So
Right.
the fasting flock is just a group of like fasters, like-minded fasters. I think that for me, I discovered fasting through medicine, really. I mean, I grew up giving up Lent on Sundays. That was my religious background. And I'm sure you did
Okay. Yeah.
Ramadan fasting. And well, as kids, though, you don't do Ramadan fasting, right? Just
Usually start at like 7. They start to, yeah, my children are also doing it now. Yeah, they start around 7 and then by 10 and 12, they're doing full day. So yeah.
I'm doing a little too, but
Yeah,
really more the medical side that got me interested in fasting. I mean, and
right.
intermittent fasting is not exactly spiritual fasting.
Yeah.
It can be. And so what I love though in our fasting flock is combining it all together for like
Mm.
spiritual, physical, and mental health. So we do things like expectation fasts and
Oh,
worry fasts. And we do 24-hour fast, like more of a traditional medical fast, but we also do, I like longer fasting for spiritual purposes if I'm wanting to work through something. And kind of bringing all of my elements into fasting is what I do in my fasting,
yeah.
which is my Facebook group. Yeah.
Yeah, so tell me about the fasting specifically for you. What, because it seems to be a pivotal part of the way that you coach and help people through medical issues. So what is it about fasting and intermittent fasting that's so great for our bodies, just in case people are new to it or like want to maybe try and start incorporating it? What's the best way to go about doing that?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many health benefits. And what surprised me is that everybody thinks, like, especially my ladies, when they hit their weight loss goals, they're like, so now I stop fasting. I'm like, what's the first thing we want to give up? It's the
The
first
thing
thing
that
to go.
works. The thing that works is
Right.
when we give up.
Right. And so I kind of got really curious after that because really the studies support, and interestingly, so many of our studies come from Ramadan, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
prolonged, I mean, that 30-day fast Like, I remember when I was looking back, I'm like, so what did we see with Ramadan? Like, do we see people actually lose weight? Do we see improvements in blood
Yeah, but
sugar?
then we eat. People eat at sunset, like overeating.
That's it.
Like, that's the
That's it.
guilty.
Yes, you nailed it. So
Yeah.
like it's interesting because there are really not, I mean, there was a question on a big study recently from China that said maybe there's like a risk for heart disease in fasting, but I think even the way that study was done was questionable.
Mm,
Up until then, there are not any bad sides to fasting.
no
Like
bad
it's
side.
good for your health, it lowers blood pressure, it helps insulin resistance. They're seeing it helping with certain cancers and all of like, I mean, it mental clarity, clears brain fog, gives you more energy. There's just no downside to not eating constantly like we do in American
Yeah, it's the source of all of it. It's like
culture.
backing everything up and everything's inflamed. It's all a problem.
But the interesting thing we do see is that in Ramadan, the studies are mixed on weight loss, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's where intermittent fasting came along to look at it and from the medical standpoint, right? Of
Yeah.
like, okay, so why is that, right? Like you're right. You have to practice, like I call it energized eating. I'm not a fan of diets. Very simple eating program around it to support yourself in that, right? So that you feel good, so that you are energizing yourself. But yeah, everybody always wants to like fasting is the one thing that, and it's interesting because I feel like in so much of like, especially Christian culture, it's kind of been written out fasting. I think
Yeah.
doctors have said it's not safe. Like, and I noticed even I was looking up like the rules around Ramadan, like chronic illness, you shouldn't fast, right?
Yeah, or pregnancy, or if you're hardship. Yeah, and women on their menstrual cycle don't pray and fast. So it's like there's different exemptions for fasting, especially nursing and pregnancy are probably the most common for especially for women. Yeah, because I had a hard time making milk if I was fasting stuff.
Right. And I just
Yeah.
actually, it's funny, just before this, I coached a lady on nursing and fasting,
Oh,
right?
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's true. We have to look for healthy ways to do this. We certainly know that like there's a lot of people who go try to extreme diet through fasting. That's why I say
Right.
in many ways I think fasting is very similar to the shots. Like it really has the same like concern with like overeating afterwards and disordered eating around it. But I
Right.
think when you add in the spiritual component of it, it's so much like first of all it takes it to a different level. But second of all, it's so much easier to do it in healthy ways than if you're just doing it to try to get 3 pounds off for a wedding, right? Or things
Right.
like that. It's like, no, I really want to gain like spiritual growth as well as I align my body to honor it and to like really align it for being the most powerful version of me.
Yeah, and the energized eating, like you said, as creating a positive relationship with the food intake rather than a hostile or doing it because you have to or having to count the calories and being upset. It's like you want to eat in ways that are aligning and making you feel good about yourself every day. So that's an important. Such an important mindset shift that we all have to kind of go through at certain points in that journey. It's the hardest part. Yeah.
Yes. Changing. I always tell people, so the studies show really, truly, eating is the key to weight loss, right?
Yeah.
And reaching a healthy weight, but changing your relationship with food is
Right.
sustainable weight loss, right?
Yeah.
Diets don't do it. They just kind of create disordered eating. Whereas honoring food for what it is, honoring that it's here to energize my body, honoring that like I want to lose weight, but I also want to be less bloated and less constipated. And I want to feel good in my body. And I want to have the energy and the power to do whatever life throws my way and live fully. That's kind of, I guess, if I was to describe the Healthy Me Reset, that's it. Like
I love it.
it's
That's
that
good.
space of being the healthiest version of you with, and I love what I'm able to do that's a little different is I bring my medical background. So if someone really is struggling with something, that's not, I think oftentimes what I hear in coaching world is like, well, I'm not a doctor. And I'm like, well, I am a doctor. So I can tell you, right? Like
you
I
you get to say that. You get to pull the doctor card. It's
feel
pretty
that.
good. Yeah, that's the best thing. And getting people off the diets, off the fad diet, the unhealthy medications and shedding pounds in a way that's sustainable and long lasting with longevity. And so much of the health and healing systems right now is talking about our body's ability to be regenerative and regenerate health and healing aspects of ourselves that We don't need to rely on necessarily medications and things that make other parts of the body worse, but creating it in a regenerative, healthy, longevity driven way is so important. So I just love that work that you're doing.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emily. Well, I know we got to wrap it up here, so just any final thoughts, and actually where can audience go to best find you, because I know you have your website, your Instagram, you're all over, you're even on TikTok. So where's the best place for people to find you if they want to learn more and start their purpose-driven life journey?
Yes, yes. So my website is emily.com. And then I think it's Dr. Emily Van Zant at Instagram, and Facebook is Emily Van Zant MD too. So,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, we'll have all of those links listed, and hopefully people come, they look at your program, and I definitely love the work that you do, and everything you put out on social media is educational and interesting, and yeah, so definitely want to help support that. And any final thoughts and words of wisdom that you'd like to leave our audience with, or any listeners, before we wrap up here?
I think just like everyone's journey to health is individual, right? Like it's
Mhm.
individualized. And I think that for so many of us, we start lacking belief in ourselves and our ability when what we were told was supposed to work didn't work. And I
Yeah.
always tell people, challenge that, right? If it didn't, oftentimes I hear, well, I know what to do, I just don't do it. I'm like, well, then you don't know what to do for you. So like this thought of like I can really be the healthiest version of me without a ton of external things. Like if I just really create a space to honor myself and go after being that version of myself, your physical body, your weight loss is no different than every other area of your life. You just have some thought errors, and we've kind of been sold what's probably showing to be very unhealthy ways to do it.
Yeah, and a lot of times we all think we know what's right for us, but then we don't, or we're wrong, or we think we know, but we don't. And so, yeah, that customized, supportive approach and like learning from someone who has that expertise is so critical, because otherwise it's really hard to figure out on our own. So I love that. And I think you bring together the community that's needed and everything for people to learn about fasting and the best ways to do these things for our bodies. So, yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Emily. I really appreciate it. And I hope to have you back in the future. It's a great
Thank you so
conversation.
much.
Thank you. All right. Have a great day.
You
Thank you.
too.
Bye bye.